This happened back when I was in college, and honestly, it's one of those things that still keeps me up at night sometimes. It was supposed to be just another fun night. My friend Alex had invited us over to his place because his parents were out of town. You know the deal, house to ourselves, no adult supervision, just a bunch of 20-year-olds ready to let loose. We were all looking forward to it, especially since finals had just ended, and we all needed the break. The party started off great. Music blasting, people laughing, drinks flowing, the usual scene. There were about 30 of us. Some I knew well, others were friends of friends. As the night went on, more people showed up and the atmosphere got even more lively. It wasn't long before it felt like the entire campus had crammed into Alex's house. Around midnight, things took a weird turn. A guy I'd never seen before started acting really off. He was tall, scruffy, kind of stood out because he wasn't talking much, just skulking around, nursing his drink. Nobody knew who he was. We all assumed he was a friend of a friend. He started pushing people around, lightly at first, like he was just messing, but then more aggressively. People started to get uncomfortable, and Alex tried to confront him. The guy flipped out. He shoved Alex so hard he fell back against the wall. The music cut out, and everyone's attention snapped to the scene. It was like all the air got sucked out of the room. Alex got up, his face red, more from embarrassment than pain, and again told the guy he needed to leave. That's when the real chaos started. The guy pulled out a knife. It wasn't big, but in the dim light, it might as well have been a sword. People screamed, scattering in every direction. The fun vibe turned into pure panic. Some ran upstairs, others to the kitchen, anywhere they could feel safe. The guy started waving the knife around, not really going after anyone, but threatening enough to keep people away. I hid behind the sofa, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. I could hear Alex trying to talk the guy down. "Just put the knife away, man. You don't want to do this." But the guy was beyond reason. He was yelling incoherently about being cheated or something. None of it made sense. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, the police sirens could be heard outside. Someone had called 911. The guy must have heard it too, because he suddenly bolted toward the back door. Last I saw, he was sprinting into the night as the police stormed in. The aftermath was a mess. Alex's house was trashed, people were shaken, a couple had minor injuries from the commotion, and everyone was giving statements to the cops. Turns out, no one knew who that guy was. He wasn't invited, just some random person who'd walked in off the street. The police caught him later that night. He was high on something fierce and had a bunch of warrants out for his arrest. We were all lucky it didn't go any worse than it did, but it was a brutal reminder of how quickly things can go south. Since then, I've never looked at house parties the same way. There's always that what if in the back of my mind. My friend Jake had recently moved into an old house he rented on the outskirts of town. It had a reputation for being creepy, perfect for Halloween, and he was all about playing it up for scares. He told us he'd decked the place out with all sorts of decorations, and he wasn't kidding. When we arrived, the house looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Fog machines, eerie lights, and spooky music playing from hidden speakers. The party started off fun, with everyone complimenting each other's costumes and enjoying the atmosphere. As the night progressed, Jake decided to ramp up the horror vibe by suggesting we play a game of hide and seek in the dark. Everyone was into it. The thrill of hiding in a supposedly haunted house seemed like the ultimate Halloween experience. We drew lots to see who would be it first, and unfortunately, I drew the short straw. Armed with only a flashlight, I started counting at the front hall. my voice echoing slightly in the empty spaces of the old house. The others scattered, their footsteps and giggles fading as they found hiding spots. When I finished counting, I clicked on the flashlight and started my search. The house was much bigger than I had anticipated, with countless rooms and corridors twisting away into shadow. It was disorienting, and the decorations made it even more unsettling. Figures that looked almost too lifelike in the dim light, and sounds that didn't seem like they should be part of any playlist. I checked several rooms without finding anyone, the tension building in the silence. That's when I heard the first scream, sharp, terrified, and cut off too abruptly. It came from upstairs. I ran up, calling out thinking it was a prank, but there was an edge of real fear in that scream that you can't fake. The upstairs hallway was dim, the only light coming from my flashlight. The beam fell on a door that was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and that's when I found Sarah, one of my friends, crouched in the corner of the room, her costume torn, eyes wide with fright. She was shaking, unable to form words, just pointing to the closet across the room. I approached slowly, adrenaline surging through my veins, and pulled the door open. Nothing but coats and old boxes. That's when I noticed the real problem. The window in the room was wide open, curtains fluttering slightly in the breeze. It hit me then, with a chill that ran deeper than the October cold. Someone else had been in the house with us, someone not part of our group. The police arrived within minutes after my call. It turned out there had been several break-ins in the area recently, but no one had ever been hurt until now. Sarah was lucky, escaping with only a few scratches and the terror of her encounter. The intruder had fled when she screamed, probably not expecting anyone to find her so quickly. The rest of the night was a blur of police questions and shaken friends gathering in the living room, no one feeling the festive spirit anymore. The haunted reputation of Jake's house no longer seemed like just a fun story. We all knew we had just lived through a real nightmare. We never played games in the dark again, and Jake moved out at the end of the semester. We sometimes talk about that night, but it's never with laughter. Only relief that we made it through, and sorrow for the innocent fun we lost. This has to be the craziest, most messed up thing that's ever happened to me. I'm still shaking, just thinking about it. It started out as just a regular Saturday night. My buddy Kyle was having a huge party at his place to celebrate graduating college. We're talking kegs, a live band, the whole 9 yards. Pretty much everyone we knew was going to be there. I showed up around 10 p.m. with a couple of my other friends. The party was already in full swing, music blasting, people spilling out onto the front lawn, you know the deal. We headed straight for the keg in the backyard to get our drinks on. After a couple hours, the place was a madhouse. Bodies everywhere, drinks spilling, that unmistakable smell hanging thick in the air. Classic college party scene. That's when I ran into Gary. This total stranger who no one seemed to know or recognize. Kinda scraggly looking dude. Probably in his 40s, just kinda blending in with all the chaos. He came up to me slurring something about needing to use the restroom. I pointed him towards the bathroom, but he was insisting he needed to go outside, saying the line was too long. Kinda weird, but I was already moving on, so I just forgot about him. A little while later, I was out back trying to get some fresh air away from the crowd. That's when I saw Gary again, straight up urinating on the side of Kyle's house, right in front of everybody. I started shouting at him, "Hey man, what are you doing? You can't just do that at someone's house." Gary didn't even seem fazed, though. He just gave me this crazy look and started laughing maniacally. At this point, others saw what was going on and came rushing over, yelling at this weirdo to stop. Gary clearly wasn't all there, though. Eyes glazed over, laughing this deeply unsettling laugh. Then, out of nowhere, he suddenly stopped and ran straight for the gate leading to the woods behind Kyle's place. Some of us took off after him, but he was surprisingly fast. We chased him about 100 yards into the trees before losing him in the darkness. Everyone was freaked out and arguing over what to do when we heard the most blood-curdling scream cut through the night. It seriously made my blood run cold. Against my better judgment, I followed the screams further into the woods, a few others trailing me. That's when we came across... Oh man, I don't even want to say it. Let's just say there was a lot of blood, like straight-up crazy horror movie levels. I got sick at the sight of it. We all ran out of those woods as fast as we could, screaming at the top of our lungs. People came flooding out of the party. Total chaos everywhere. The cops showed up and apparently ended up finding Gary wandering the streets nearby, clothes completely soaked in blood. They arrested him on the spot, but he was just laughing the whole time like an absolute psycho. I've tried my best to blot out the details of whatever horrible, unspeakable thing I saw in those woods. The bloody mess has haunted my nightmares ever since, though. I'll never be able to shake the crazy laughter. The craziest part. Come to find out, Gary was a convicted murderer who had only been released from prison a few weeks earlier. Total wacko who somehow slipped through the cracks. I've never felt so unsafe, so vulnerable as I did in those woods that night. It's a harsh reminder that true evil can strike at any time, anywhere, even during what's supposed to be one of the best nights of your life with friends. Needless to say, I haven't been able to bring myself to go to another party since then. That night will forever be burned into my brain as one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I have severe PTSD and paranoia from it all. I'll never look at strangers the same way again. I'll never forget the night my friends and I decided to throw a party at the end of our senior year. We'd all gone through high school together, and since we were heading off to different colleges, it felt right to go out with a bang. My friend Jeremy offered his house since it was big and somewhat isolated, which we thought was perfect for a party without complaints about noise. Everything started out perfectly normal. Tons of people showed up. The music was great, and everyone was having a blast. As the evening wore on, Jeremy decided it would be a great idea to start a bonfire in the backyard. We all thought it sounded fun, and gathered around the fire, telling stories and roasting marshmallows. That's when things started to go wrong. One of the guys, Mark, decided to amp things up by pouring more fuel onto the fire. Before anyone could stop him, he splashed a large amount of gasoline from a can he found in the shed. The fire roared to life so fiercely that it caught the edge of a nearby tablecloth. In seconds, the flames spread more than we could handle. Panic set in immediately. Everyone scrambled, some trying to put out the fire, others just trying to get away. In the chaos, one of our friends, Lisa, tripped over a chair that had been knocked over and fell close to the fire. Her sleeve caught alight, and it was the most horrifying thing I've ever witnessed. People were screaming, trying desperately to help her. Someone had the presence of mind to grab a blanket and tackled her to the ground, smothering the flames. The fire department arrived quickly after someone called 911, but the mood was completely destroyed. The fire was put out, but Lisa was rushed to the hospital with severe burns. The party ended with everyone in shock and the police questioning Mark and Jeremy about the fire safety measures, which, frankly, there were none. Lisa spent weeks in the hospital, and thankfully she recovered, though she had some scars that were constant reminders of that night. As for the rest of us, we learned a hard lesson about recklessness and safety. The guilt of what happened to Lisa weighed heavily on everyone, especially Mark, who had never intended for things to get out of hand like that. It was supposed to be a night of good memories, but it turned into a tragedy. Now, whenever there's a gathering, I'm the first to double-check safety precautions, because some lessons you only need to learn once. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.